What these animals were doing was not normal. That much was clear to everybody on the excursion. Incidentally, a vet was also among them, and he was the only one who seemed to realize what was really going on. He was terrified, but he knew he needed to get everyone to safety immediately. "Everybody, do you hear me? I'm serious. We need to get out of here right now." A few of the others just looked in his direction for a second, but they immediately turned back to the sheep, amazed by the weird phenomenon that was occurring right in front of them. Mark looked at the sheep again, thinking that maybe he had gotten it wrong, but there was no doubt about it. They were very restless and walking in circles. He'd never seen this kind of behavior before, but he had heard and read about it enough to be able to recognize it. He was 100% sure of what was happening here, and it was bad news. Mark was at his wit's end, thinking of a way to make everyone around him understand that they were truly in danger. But before we start, smash the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our upcoming stories. He finally just grabbed the guy who happened to be standing next to him by the shoulders and explained what was going to happen if they did not leave right now. "But what about the rest of the trip? We still have to hike up the mountain," the guy replied. Mark groaned, realizing that this was going to be more difficult than he had hoped. "What don't you understand about what I just said? If you stay here, you risk your life." Some others heard what he had told the man, and he finally had their attention. Mark breathed a sigh of relief as he realized that they were all listening to him now. He jumped up on a big rock and he yelled, "Please, listen up." Everyone finally stopped talking and the group gathered around him, waiting for him to continue. Pointing to the sheep that were walking in a circle on the field is a big problem. He went on to repeat the same explanation he had given to that man a minute ago, and the others gasped as they heard what he told them. They were starting to panic. In the midst of growing chaos, Mark's voice cut through the panicked crowd. He urged everyone to stay calm and emphasized that leaving immediately was their best chance. The group was reluctant but recognized the urgency in his tone. A few members of the hiking group, dismissive of Mark's warnings, chose to continue up the mountain, mocking the supposed danger. Mark, although disappointed, respected their choice, urging those who would listen to follow him instead. As he led the majority of the group down to safety, one grateful woman approached, acknowledging his efforts and expressing concern for those left behind. Mark solemnly admitted he feared for their safety, noting the animals' distressed behavior as an ominous sign. Confident in his choice, he felt a mix of relief and sadness, hoping the others would be safe despite their risky decision. As he led them back through the forest, the rain began to fall, transforming into a fierce downpour that turned the path into a slick, treacherous obstacle course. The ground, once stable, became a muddy mess, threatening to pull them down with each step. Visibility dwindled to a few feet, and Mark's experience as a guide became their lifeline. Despite the rain, Mark's knowledge of the terrain allowed him to navigate through the darkness. He pointed out firm patches of ground, hidden rocks, and safer routes, his voice steady and calm even as the rain lashed down. The group's nerves were stretched thin, but Mark's confidence gave them a sense of hope. As they moved, they formed a human chain, each member gripping the next. This wasn't just a method for stability, it was a tangible reassurance that they were in this together, that each person would do their part to protect the others. Suddenly, a shrill cry broke the quiet as Clara slipped on a mossy rock. She collapsed, clutching her ankle in pain. Two group members with medical experience, Tara and Leo, quickly assessed her injury and worked together to create a makeshift splint using a strong branch and a few belts. The group paused, huddling around Clara, torn between the urgency to move and their instinct to care for one another. Mark knelt beside her, offering comfort and quiet encouragement, recognizing the weight of his responsibility. Realizing they couldn't continue like this, Mark remembered an old cabin nearby from a previous expedition. He led them through the worsening storm, drawing on memory to find the structure. Finally, the cabin emerged through the sheets of rain and they staggered inside, weary and cold but relieved to be under a roof. The musty scent of old wood filled their lungs as they leaned against the walls, catching their breath. Within minutes, they had a fire blazing in the hearth, casting a warm glow and bringing a sense of comfort to the weary group. Wet clothes were laid out near the fire, each one slowly surrendering its dampness to the heat. As they settled in, Mark noticed an old radio covered in dust in the corner. Curious, he tinkered with it, coaxing it to life until through the static, a voice crackled into the room. The group fell silent as they listened to a distant broadcast warning of unusual animal behavior and strange disturbances. While vague, the message spoke of precautions, advising those in affected areas to stay alert. The radio report confirmed Mark's suspicions. and a nervous tension filled the cabin as they absorbed the implications. With the storm howling outside, Mark laid out a map on a table and illuminated it with a lantern. He began marking possible routes and safe zones, reviewing potential hazards they might face. The group gathered around, each person contributing ideas, fears, and observations. As they considered their next steps, Tara raised a concern. What about the others at the mountain base, and the people in the nearby town? The room fell quiet, and Mark felt the weight of the responsibility that now extended beyond their small group. Mark suggested a bold but risky plan. They would split up. One team would head to the mountain base to warn any remaining hikers, while the other would make its way to town to alert the townspeople. The night wore on as they prepared for the mission, gathering supplies and reviewing the plan. By dawn, the two groups were ready. They embraced each other with words of encouragement, knowing that each step was vital, not only for their survival but potentially for many others. Mark's team made their way through the dense forest, now alive with eerie noises. The once familiar landscape felt foreign, as though they were trespassing on something primal and angry. Each rustle, each distant animal call heightened their sense of urgency. When they reached the town, they found the townspeople going about their day, blissfully unaware of the impending danger. Mark gathered them at the community hall, played the radio broadcast, and shared the details of what they had encountered. His words were met with mixed reactions, some skeptical, some fearful, but the town leaders recognized the urgency and began organizing an evacuation plan. Meanwhile, the second group ascended the mountain to find the hikers who had dismissed Mark's earlier warnings. They found them, visibly shaken and remorseful, at the base of a steep incline. Their earlier confidence had vanished, and now, humbled, they accepted Mark's group's guidance. The combined groups carefully descended the mountain together, taking extra care on the wet, slippery rocks, each step a delicate balance between haste and caution. As dawn broke, a tremor suddenly shook the earth, nearly toppling them. Trees creaked and swayed as the ground pulsed beneath their feet. Both groups quickened their pace, now fully aware of the danger that loomed. Upon reaching the town, Mark coordinated with local authorities, who had begun setting up makeshift camps at designated safe zones. Families packed essentials, neighbors helped one another, and a sense of unity bound the community as they prepared to face the unknown. As the day wore on, the townspeople braced themselves. Birds, normally scattered through the forest, flew overhead in vast, erratic patterns. Animal cries filled the air, creating a symphony of distress. The group took it as a clear warning. Nature was on edge, and they needed to be prepared. As night fell, Mark and his group made one final trip back to the mountain to check for any stragglers. The forest had become an ominous place, alive with strange sounds and shadows, but they pressed on, driven by a commitment to ensure everyone's safety. Each torch they held was a beacon of hope against the darkness, guiding them through treacherous terrain. Suddenly, a massive quake hit, more powerful than any before. The town shook, trees cracked, and the ground itself seemed to heave. Panic rippled through the town, but so did resolve. Families held each other close, and the townspeople worked together, ensuring no one was left behind in the chaos. As the quake subsided, Mark and his team returned to the town, where relief and gratitude filled the air. Families embraced, tears flowed, and strangers offered heartfelt thanks to those who had risked so much. Mark and his group were hailed as heroes, celebrated not only for their guidance and knowledge, but for their selfless acts of bravery. The next morning, the townspeople emerged from shelters, assessing the damage but filled with a renewed sense of purpose. The quake had left destruction in its wake, yet the people's spirits were unbroken. They worked together to clear debris, provide aid to the injured, and rebuild what had been lost. In the heart of the town, a large fire was lit, around which the community gathered. Survivors shared stories of courage, unity, and resilience. For Mark, sitting quietly by the fire, this experience had reinforced a profound respect for nature's power and the strength found in human connection. As dawn broke, the town faced a new day, wiser and more unified. The people had learned to heed the signs, to respect the forces beyond their control, and most importantly, to rely on each other. In the face of nature's might, they had proven that courage, unity, and compassion could overcome even the greatest of challenges. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another unbelievable tale like this one.